Only American citizens can vote in U.S. elections. Seems like common sense, right? Well, 198 members of Congress disagree. Those Democrats voted against the SAVE Act, which did pass in the House and would require proof of citizenship to vote. But House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and his colleagues say that election integrity is actually voter suppression.
Only citizens can vote for the United States Senate. Only citizens can vote for the presidency of the United States. So this extreme MAGA Republican voter suppression bill is not designed to solve any problem on behalf of the American people. It is designed to jam people up and prevent Americans from voting.
Senator Mike Lee, who partnered with Congressman Chip Roy to craft the bill, joins us from Capitol Hill. Senator Lee, a report from Judicial Watch yesterday found that 538 foreign nationals are registered to vote in Washington, D.C. So why are Democrats so outraged that showing ID to vote when there's proof of non-citizens on the voter rolls right now?
There's proof of it, and we know that Joe Biden's let in an additional 10 million illegal immigrants just in the last 3.5 years alone. We know that we've got about 30 million non-citizens in the United States. And we know that our existing laws make it really, really easy for someone to apply for a driver's license and in the process check a box and sign their name on a dotted line and thereby become registered to vote in federal elections, even if they're non-citizens. It's all on the honor system. And it's not just difficult for the states to enforce this, it's impossible for them to do it because existing law, as interpreted by the Supreme Court a few years ago, tells the states they can't even request proof of citizenship. So my bill, the SAVE Act, I introduced the Senate version, Chip Roy introduced the House version, which passed on the House floor last night, fixes that. It closes that loophole, and that's why we need it. Democrats oppose this, but there's really only one logical reason to oppose it. It's a reason that exists only if you really want to rely on non-citizens voting in a federal election, and that's terrifying.
Matthew, your reaction to all of this, and it's kind of crazy just to see what's going on right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, first off, it's great to have you on, Senator. It's wonderful to have you here with us today. I just, as students of the constitutional system, as admirers of the constitutional system, we know there's an art to congressional statesmanship of this sort, where you craft a bill and you fight for it, knowing it will likely be shot down because you want to reveal the truth. You want to educate the entire populace about where we stand. I usually think those efforts are overplayed. This is one of the most incredible examples I've ever seen of that happening. I've never seen something so stark. And I'm curious if you expected this reaction where you basically have from the presidency on down a resounding, no, we are okay with the current system and we want it that way. And then on the other side, figures like Elon Musk appearing to rush to your side and say, this is insane.
Yeah, well, some of this I anticipated because when we discovered the problem, when we realized the enormity of the problem earlier this year, Chip Roy and I knew that this would be a fight worth fighting, and we looked into it. We started anticipating that the public would be on our side. I don't think I fully anticipated that it would be like an 81-19 issue, as we now know that it is. And Matthew, you're right to point out that we've got some heavy obstacles to passing this, but I want to make clear, I'm not willing to assume that this cannot pass. Sure, Democrats are against it. Joe Biden has said he doesn't support it, has indicated or at least suggested that he would veto it. But I'm not willing to make it that easy for them. Because the truth is, Matthew, if they are required to actually go the distance on this and really oppose it and vote it down, object to our unanimous consent requests to either pass it outright or tee it up for a fast track vote in the Senate, that's going to come at a price because voters are going to see that. 81% of American voters agree that only American citizens should vote in federal elections. This is a huge bipartisan supermajority. It's hard to find that much consensus on anything these days, but it exists here. And we're not going to make it easy for them to push it back. And I'm not willing to rule out the possibility of victory.
So you lay out some of the steps. So what is that very next step that people can get involved in and help out in some way?
Okay, so what happened yesterday was they passed it on the House floor. Today, the first available opening, I went down to the floor and I called it up and I asked that it be teed up and that it would be passed by unanimous consent. Senator Padilla from California came to the floor and objected to that. So now that that has happened, our next steps need to involve doing that multiple times, sometimes seeking to pass it outright, other times seeking to tee it up for either a voice vote or an expedited roll call vote. At that point, we will also need to be making some decisions about how best to attach it to another bill, a bill that needs to pass, a bill that's sometimes referred to in the Senate as a must-pass vehicle. The most likely candidate for this would probably be the spending bill that will need to be passed sometime between now and midnight on September 30th in order to keep the government funded. I would love to see the Speaker of the House and the minority leader in the Senate get behind an effort that would say, we need this attached. We need this attached to the spending bill or to the Defense Authorization Act, or perhaps there's some other must-pass vehicle they can think of. But we need to attach it to something because this is too important for us to just ignore it, for us to just say, oh, okay, they said no. Biden wants to veto it. The Democrats don't want to pass it because apparently they want to rely on Democratic votes being cast by non-citizens against the law. So help us spread that message that Republicans should not leave. They should not go home. Every fall in an even-numbered election year, Congress tends to recess for most or all of the month of October so that everybody can go back and finish campaigning. We should not leave at the end of September until we have moved this forward in some material way and attached it to a must-pass spending bill.
Senator, I want to shift topics real quick. We published an essay, but a related one, related to the rule of law as this bill is. We published an essay by you today at Blaze.com, and I understand it's from a book written by you and I believe 8 of your colleagues in the Senate titled American Injustice and Donald Trump. And you say in this essay that what progressives mean by law is their own power. And I like the way you put this, so that when they say the rule of law requires that they prosecute Trump and no one is above the law, what they really mean is Trump is not above their own power. Now, if that's true, if the law increasingly represents their own power, I think a lot of people on the right are asking, how do conservatives fight back?
Well, we fight back, first of all, by calling it out. And I'm grateful that Blaze was willing to publish that. It's an important concept to understand. Sometimes when you don't understand your opponent, your debate partner, whatever you want to call who you're arguing with, if you don't understand how they think, you're not going to be able to effectively combat whatever it is that they're saying, as harmful as it may be. And so when they say that, they're very often talking about them. They are the law. They are the rule of law. And when we grasp that, we're going to be in a better position to deal with it. It's a little bit like how progressive Democrats also butcher and torture other language. Now, I don't think that the word democracy is the best term to describe our form of government. It's better described as a constitutional republic. But Democrats love throwing around the term our democracy. And yet when they use the term democracy, they're more often than not lately talking about something that is the exact opposite of democracy. So the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs decision. Threat to democracy. Remember, we actually got lectured by Prince Harry of all people. Love being lectured by an actual prince, lineal descendant of King George III on democracy. The Supreme Court in the Loper-Bright case undoes Chevron deference. Threat to democracy. These are just 2 of many examples I could point to of developments that Democrats have identified as threats to democracy when really they enhance the democratic input from the citizenry. In both instances, you had a sort of judicial oligarchy taking over certain functions that are supposed to be handled by the political branches of either the states or of the federal government.
Senator Lee, you're still there in Washington, D.C., so I have to ask you, not naming any names by any means, but what are your Democrat colleagues saying right now about Joe Biden?
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating. They are referring behind closed doors to this situation and to conversations that they've apparently had to have as a conference within the last hour or two as the weekend at Bernie's chat. This is the reality in which they're swimming. I don't envy them. And yet we do have to remember that I don't want to say all of them, but a whole lot of them and a whole lot of people in the media should not pretend to be surprised here, because I think most of us, even those of us who are not Democrats, have seen this for a long time. We've seen the president of the United States shaking hands with people who were not there, or at least we can't see them. Seen him getting lost between the helicopter and the residence at the White House. We've seen all sorts of things that don't make sense. And so the fact that some people are feigning, are expressing surprise, oh my gosh, you mean to tell me that President Biden is not all there? I don't know how this is surprising to anyone. But I think they finally started to accept the fact that they've pushed it so far they can't take it any further. And I think they're looking for an off-ramp. What I don't know is where it's going to go and whether that off-ramp is going to be any better or any worse for their chances. The bottom line is, all of this ultimately focuses on the fact that Joe Biden's policies have been an unmitigated disaster. They have inflicted torture on the American people. They've made everything more expensive. The average family has to shell out at the minimum of $1,300 a month every single month just to live, just to buy groceries and gas and to pay for their housing. And that's not fair, but this is the predictable, foreseeable, and in fact foreseen result of his failed policies. So no matter where they run, they cannot hide from the failed progressive Democrat policies that have put us in this position. And that's really what's on trial, more than Joe Biden's dementia.
Well, Senator Lee, I know that we talk about Weekend at Bernie's. It's actually kind of comforting that they're talking about it over there on Capitol Hill as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.